number 10 spot we have Charles Manson. This interview was honestly kind of fascinating to me, as all I knew about Charles Manson prior to this interview was that he was known to have been a cult leader and to have killed several people. But this interview really gave me a sneak peek into how he thinks and what his personality was kind of like, and it's kind of fascinating to watch. I'm referring to his 60 Minutes interview from 1981, where for the first time he discusses the crimes he was accused of and what it's like being in prison. Manson goes on to continuously deny that he ever killed anyone, with briefly admitting to cutting an ear off. The interview starts off with the host saying, "You were sentenced to the gas chamber until they modified the death penalty. Were you happy that was done?" To which Manson replied, "Oh, I knew I wasn't going to the gas chamber because I hadn't done anything wrong." The most unsettling part of this interview to me was honestly how every so often he would say such wise statements. I guess it was just him and his brain for many years in prison, but still, it's kinda hard to even fathom a killer with any kind of somewhat positive trait. You box them obviously into a category of just plain evil and forget that they have other layers, which is quite chilling. When asked about how he feels about spending his life in prison, he replied, "Well, we are all our own prisons, and we're each our own wardens, and we do our own times, and we get stuck in our own little traps, and we kinda judge ourselves the way that we do. You know, I can't judge anybody else. The best thing I can do is judge myself and try to live with that." In our number 9 spot we have Jeffrey Dahmer. In an interview from 1993, Inside Edition gives us a very in-depth interview with Jeffrey Dahmer. A once chocolate factory worker became a serial killer who even ate some of his victims' body parts. How did a boy that grew up in a hard-working middle-class family turn into this monster? Well, the interview is quite definitely freaky, as he goes into depth as to what his thought process was like before all of his killings. The interviewer goes on about how he presents himself as intelligent and articulate, and that is probably why so many people did not think him to be a killer. When he refers to some of his killings, he speaks about blacking out and not remembering them, but he would photograph them to remember their physical beauty. He speaks about an altar he created with the 10 different skulls of the people he took the lives of. He said, "I had these obsessive thoughts and desires, thoughts wanting to control them, to possess them permanently. I killed them not because I was angry with them, but because I wanted to keep them with me. As my obsession grew, I started saving body parts such as skulls." Pretty chilling and uncomfortable to watch. In our number 8 spot we have Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy is of course known as being an American serial killer. He took the lives of at least 20 women over the course of a few years leading up to his arrest in 1979. There are many interviews with Ted, but the one I found fascinating is the one where he is still denying any of the crimes that he was being accused of. And this is an interview done in Glenwood Springs, Colorado jail on March 17th, 1977. In this interview, he's just so calm and laughing off the accusations. He's so suave and engaging, and you can truly see how he was able to get away with what he had done for so long. He had a way with words and knew how to control his emotions quite well. It's truly very fascinating to watch. It wasn't until 1989, before he was killed for his crimes, did he confess to everything that he was accused of. Coming up in our number 7 spot we have Beth Thomas. In this extremely chilling interview with a 6-year-old, Beth Thomas was being interviewed for an HBO special in 1990 where she discussed all of the horrible things that she wanted to do to her brother and her adoptive parents. She speaks without any sign of remorse, and it's truly frightening to watch. Her big blue eyes make you think that she's not from this world. She speaks about wanting to take the life of her family and how she likes to hurt them in the night so they have to lock her door. Eventually, after this interview, Beth was diagnosed with a disease called reactive attachment disorder, a rare condition in young children characterized by failing to make healthy connections with caregivers due to being extremely hurt by their parents. Beth apparently was hurt and neglected by her biological parents. This story does have a happy ending though. Apparently Beth has made a full recovery after many years of therapy, and she is now an award-winning nurse and author. Gotta love a happy ending after a very frightening beginning. In our number 6 spot we have AILEEN WUORNOS. AILEEN is another American serial killer that was charged with the killings of 7 males. Apparently, AILEEN was engaging in the selling of her body when she robbed and killed 7 of her clients. She claimed that it was self-defense all 7 times, but in an interview done for 60 Minutes Australia, AILEEN gives us a sneak peek into her mind, and it is clear that it was absolutely not self-defense, as she goes on to talk about how it was only 7 people. She goes on to justify that what she did was not a horrendous crime, but since she's been betrayed, she does care to leave this planet. Another really weird thing about this interview is her new mother. After hearing about her case, some random person reached out to her and adopted her. Very suspicious and quite weird / chilling, just as much as the interview with AILEEN. AILEEN was on death row for 12 years before being executed in the state of Florida. The famous movie Monster starring Charlize Theron is based on AILEEN's life. In our number 5 spot we have The Good Doctor. Also known as Dr. Death, Harold Shipman is arguably one of the scariest people on this list. He was a British family doctor who had gained the trust of so many patients in England. He was estimated to have killed over 200 people. He was found guilty for at least 15 killings of patients under his care and was sentenced to life in prison. This is a very brief 2-part interview of him where he honestly seems the most normal. He just looks a bit agitated that he was being filmed in the second clip, but in the first clip, he's just a regular guy that seems like he knows how to do his job pretty well, which is truly terrifying. To think that you want to put your faith in your doctors, but then who knows, there might be another Dr. Death among them that might have the intention to hurt you. What's wild to me is that he lived in a town 10 minutes away from where my mom grew up in England, so he could have been her doctor. Terrifying. In our number 4 spot we have Israel Kayes. Israel is known for killing 11 victims, and it wasn't until the day of his death was this confirmed officially, as he left a note along with drawings of 11 skulls marked with his blood. This is an interview of him done by the FBI where they are trying to piece together everything that he's done. Apparently the FBI interviewed him over 25 times in 8 months before he ended up taking his own life in his cell. In this interview he seems way too normal, which seems to be a theme of all of these people today. Apparently he did admit to a few violent crimes in 1996. Also, allegedly he used the hair and clothes from his victims as disguises for future crimes, and one time apparently he partially thawed a frozen victim and posed her for a proof of life photo after she had been dead in his shed for 2 weeks while he was on a cruise with his family. Holy moly. How in the world did this guy have a job and just seemingly appear to be a normal human while this was happening in his life? I do not know. In our number 3 spot we have Ed Kemper. This is an interview from 1984 with another American serial killer by the name of Ed Kemper. At the age of 15, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia when he killed his grandparents. He was put into a hospital for the criminally insane, but for some reason was let out by the age of 21, and that is when he went on a killing spree on a university campus in California where his mother worked. He took the life of 6 hitchhikers and then went on to take the life of his mother and best friend. In this interview he discusses so calmly how he is someone who has been killing people for almost 20 years. He goes on to describe his thought process of how he was, quote, raging inside. I was commanding. He goes on to talk about how his mom had anger towards men and would take it out on him. He then goes on to describe that one of the factors for why he did what he did was possibly because he was emotionally impotent. Quote, I was scared to death at failing at male-female relationships. Apparently Ed asked for the death penalty after he was found sane and guilty, however was given 8 concurrent life sentences in prison as capital capital punishment was suspended in California at that time. A chilling interview that really is worth the watch. In our number 2 spot, we have Keith Hunter Jesperson. Keith is a Canadian-American serial killer that was once a truck driver. He branded himself as the happy face killer. What, was he inspired by the wet bandits from Home Alone? The theatrics right there must have showcased that he was clearly insane to some extent. But in this case, he apparently was proven to be sane. Just evil. In this video, he is making a full confession via audio to his 8 killings, and he talks about not understanding why he did them. He started drawing a smiley face symbol to tempt investigators to track him. Apparently, he once boasted about hurting a girl, and there were confessions on a wall where he wrote, "I killed Tanya Bennett," one of his many victims. Pretty horrendous. In this video, we also see him in the courtroom going into detail about how he killed his victims, and it's pretty gruesome to hear. Would not recommend watching this right before bed. Or ever. In our number 1 spot, we have John Wayne Gacy. This is the notorious clown killer of the 70s and early 80s. There is an interview done with him almost 14 years after he was convicted of killing 33 times, and in this interview he is still claiming that he is innocent and was framed. He said that he took a truth serum that has shown that he did not commit these crimes. I'm sorry, are we in Harry Potter? How did I not know that this existed? Apparently, it's a psychedelic serum that is supposed to make people more suggestible and their memories subject to reconstruction and fabrication. Interesting. Well, in any case, this interview is fascinating to see as he seems way too normal and goes on to talk about the fact that he's a good man. A family man. It's hard to believe that he committed such horrible acts until he has a little slip up saying that one of the people that they are talking about, quote, is not one of the people that I killed. Yikes. Starting off this countdown, we have Stephen McDaniel.
Yeah, Lauren was my neighbor. We're just trying to find out where she is at this point. I mean, no one has seen her since Saturday. I mean, the last time anyone heard from her was an email that she sent out, and no one's heard from her since.
In June of 2011, Stephen McDaniel killed his neighbor and classmate Lauren Giddings. Apparently, he had a fantasy of committing the perfect murder, but this murder was anything but perfect, and he got caught pretty soon. So the day her body was found, Stephen actually was interviewed by a news station. Throughout his whole interview, he tries to act concerned and shocked by her disappearance.
Do you know anybody any enemies she might have had, somebody that might want to hurt her?
No, we don't know where she is. I mean, the only thing we can think is that maybe she went out running and someone snatched her.
He also tries to make it seem like she got killed after going out for a run. But throughout the interview, he makes it clear that he knew far more about Lauren than he had let on. At one point, the interview informs him that her body was found. And you can see the moment that he realized he was screwed.
We just don't know where she is.
What about in the parking lot area? I know they've been doing a lot of, I think that's where they have recovered the body or whatever they recovered from there.
Body?
Had you seen anything there? Had you seen anything there? I mean, we don't know if this is the same person. You know what I mean? Like, they took out a body there earlier. We don't know if it's the same person or not. That's how we're trying to ask people if they know who lived there. Are you okay, sir?
After taking a second to regroup himself, he continues on with the interview, but you can tell he knows he's been caught.
I don't know anyone that would want to hurt her. She was as nice a person as there is.
In 2014, McDaniel pleaded guilty to the murder. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Also, make sure to check out part 1 to this video. Coming in at number 9, we have Wayne.
With a psychopath, I would argue that emotion is like being colorblind for them, and nothing we can do is actually going to instill a sense of empathy. This is really a waste of time.
This man, only referred to as Wayne, was the subject of the 2000 Channel 4 documentary titled Psychopath. Now, I couldn't find much about him besides what the documentary said, but apparently Wayne stabbed and killed someone that pissed him off. That still hasn't been verified, but that's what the rumors are. But what's startling is how he got an extremely rare score of 40 out of 40 on the psychopathy checklist. Like, this dude is on another level.
The therapists are wonderful. I learn a great deal from them. Sometimes it can be hard. I suppose that's the way it's supposed to be when you're growing up. I'm ready to go now. I know that that decision will come from others who have already seen my change.
It's creepy how he's trying to convince the therapist that he's fine and should be let out. In our 8th spot, we have the grave robber. Now, I for sure have talked about this video before, but it definitely deserves a spot on this list. This interview is with an unidentified teen from the 90s. In the video, he talks all about how he robs graves and then proceeds to tell us how to do it and how to do it so you don't get caught and what to do afterwards with the body parts.
Now, so what you do is you grab it around here. You grab it here and peel it back like that. Okay? Peel it back. Alright? And then it'll pull off. It'll make a disgusting sound.
Throughout this whole video, he's holding a real-life skull that he robbed from someone's grave. Now, what's creepy about this video is that no one knows who this guy is. Rumor has it that the video surfaced on the dark web and later got leaked and then uploaded to YouTube, but we don't know for sure. Like, just look at how creepy this is.
Right, this is a piece of the brains. Let's see. Right, there's another piece of brains. If I had something wet here, I would wet them up and let you see how the brains look.
It's honestly very unsettling. And he also gives us tips for how not to get caught.
Never leave witnesses. If you have to knock them out so that way they think it's a dream. It's best not to kill, but if it's necessary, do it.
Like, who is this video for? And why did he make it? Moving on to number 7, we have Edmund Kemper. Ed Kemper, also known as Big Ed, is an American serial killer who killed 10 individuals. It all started back in 1964 when Ed killed his grandparents at the age of 15. He claimed that he killed them just to see what it felt like.
I'm saying I've wanted to kill my mother since I was 8 years old, and I'm not proud of that. It started with surrogates at a non-human level. Physical objects, my possessions, other people's, destruction of things that are cared about, and then destruction of things that are living on a lower level, small animals, insects, animals, and then finally people.
As he said in this interview, he literally had an urge to kill since he was young. After the death of his grandparents, he was locked away for 5 years. Then in 1969, he was released at the age of 21. But he didn't learn his lesson because he went on to murder 8 more individuals, one of them being his own mother. Eventually, he was convicted again. Here we have him talking about his first murder, his grandparents.
It started coming to a head again, so I went back down. I ran away back down there. And then a month later, I'm up living with my grandparents in the mountains, and 10 months later, I murdered them. It made it worse to be on top of a mountain. I was literally on top of a mountain when it happened. And I sensed everybody in the world just stopping what they were doing, turning around, saw what I did, and are coming to get me. And I knew I was paranoid at that moment. I knew anybody that came up there and gave me a funny look or a fishy eye or quizzical look, I'd have blown their brains out thinking they were coming to get me.
In our 6th spot, we have Kevin Davis. This interview is very disturbing to watch, so be warned. On March 27th, 2010, Kevin Davis killed his mother, Kimberly Hill. That morning, he asked his mom if he could take his own life, and Kimberly basically kind of just dismissed him. And that was not the answer he was hoping for. I guess he wanted his mother to fight for him to live. So he ended up killing his mother instead. In this interview, he calmly tells exactly what he did to his mom. Every last detail.
I tried to strangle her with a cord. Ripped the cord from a video game console controller. That didn't work. She was sitting on the couch watching TV. Okay. That didn't work out too well. She started screaming, and so I went to her room, opened a drawer at the very bottom to the right. I pulled out a hammer.
Then you can guess what he did with that hammer. But it doesn't stop there.
That's when you reached in and grabbed the brain?
Yeah, I kicked at it a bit. Then I just, that was kind of silly, but then I just decided to reach in and kind of just...
That is horrifying. But that's not all he did to his poor mother, but it's far too disturbing to talk about this case any further. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Liam McCatsney. On December 2nd, 2016, Sarah Stern went missing. Who's to blame for this? Her friends, Liam McCatsney and Preston Taylor. Basically, Liam had learned that Sarah had been left a large sum of money from her mother when she passed away. She told Liam about this, and Liam and Preston made a plan to kill her and then steal the money. But they were caught after a former friend secretly videotaped Liam's confession.
Yeah, and dude, alright, so I'm hanging out with her. She has, we went to the bank, she took some money out, not all of her money. We're counting it out, and then she goes to walk out the front door. I choke her out, drag her. My biggest problem was the dog.
So Liam had went to Sarah's house, strangled her, and then stole $9,000. Less than he thought there was, but that was because Sarah spent a lot of the money already. The saddest part is during the taping when he said exactly how he killed her.
It took me a half an hour to kill her. I thought I was going to be able to choke her out and have her out in like a couple minutes.
After that, the two threw her body over a bridge. It's so disturbing. Like, Sarah thought that she could trust Liam. She never thought that he would take her life. Coming in at number 4, we have John Wayne Gacy. Chances are you've heard of him. He was an American serial killer often called the Killer Clown. He got his name since he would dress up as Pogo the Clown for neighborhood events or children's parties. Over several years, Gacy murdered 33 people. In 1978, Gacy was finally caught. The interview you are about to see was the first time he ever did an interview about the case. It was filmed while he was on death row. And he did it to try and get people to see that he was innocent. He's not innocent though.
People don't want to know the truth and the honesty of it. If they want to be convinced or brainwashed into what they believe, then fine, then go ahead and kill me. But vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, because you will have executed somebody that didn't commit the crime.
He thinks people were brainwashed into thinking he killed those people, even though all the evidence suggests that he did, like they were found all over his property.
When they paint the image that I was this monster who picked up like these altar boys along the street and swatted them like flies, I said, this is ludicrous.
The craziest part of the interview is that Gacy claims to have taken a high amount of truth serum and even then maintained his innocence.
Taking 3.5 hours of truth serum. And under sodium amytal, the maximum amount that I could have, it shows that I have no knowledge of the crime whatsoever.
But there's absolutely no proof anywhere that he even took truth serum. So there you go. He's a creepy liar and killer. In our 3rd spot, we have Michael Ross.
Well, I'm a serial killer. I've killed 8 women, 6 in this state and 2 in New York.
Michael Ross was an American serial killer that between 1981 to 1984 murdered 8 women. What's creepy is how in his interview, he just calmly straight up admits that he's a serial killer, as if it's no big deal. He then proceeds to say that it's only 8 women that he's killed. Other people have higher counts. It's as if he finds it okay because the number is small to him.
I'm not a big serial killer, by the way. 8 people, that's nothing. I mean, there's a lot of other guys you can go see.
Now, another part about this interview that creeps me out, much like the others on this list, is how he recounts the time he killed his victim.
I saw this woman walking along the road with a stroller. I pulled off the side of the road. She came into the driveway, walked up the driveway. I was behind the house. She saw me and I grabbed her.
On July 6, 1987, he was sentenced to death. He spent 18 years on death row and then was executed in May of 2005. Moving on, number 2, we have Gerard John SCHAEFER.
Mr. SCHAEFER, how long have you been imprisoned?
Since 1973.
And what are you accused of?
Well, do you mean what am I convicted of or what am I accused of? I'm accused of a lot more than I'm convicted of.
This guy is so arrogant, also very creepy. So Gerard SCHAEFER was a former sheriff's deputy that used his title to kill women. Now it's thought that he was a serial killer, but this has never been proved. But he was found guilty of murdering 2 women.
First, what are you accused of?
Well, I was accused of originally accused of killing 34 women. But nobody has ever managed to come up with 34 names jurisdictions or anything else. It's a false accusation.
So basically, on July 21st, 1973, SCHAEFER pulled over 2 girls who were hitchhiking, saying that it was illegal in the country, which it wasn't. He then drove them to a swamp area and tied them to a tree. But the girls were lucky. SCHAEFER was going to shoot them, but right before he was about to, he got a call on his police radio. So he went back to his car to check on it. And when he did, the girls managed to escape and report him. He was then arrested for unlawful imprisonment and aggravated assault. 2 months after he posted bail, he abducted 2 more female hitchhikers, but this time he actually took their lives.
And what is your conviction?
I was convicted of killing 2 in Fort Pierce. I was never shown to be at the crime scene. There was never any link between me and the people that were killed, except the testimony of the mother of one of them.
He's so creepy. Also, notice that he barely blinks. This guy just gives me the heebie-jeebies. In our number 1 spot, we have Issei Sagawa. This case is incredibly messed up and extremely dark. It literally made me feel sick to my stomach just researching about it. So Issei Sagawa is a Japanese man who in 1981 killed and ate a woman named Renee Hartvelt in Paris. But he was never truly convicted of his crimes. He literally only spent 2 days in jail and then was sent back to Japan. And when he was there, he became famous. So famous that he made a living through the public's interest in his crime. Imagine that, literally becoming wealthy for killing someone.
I don't want to kill, but I couldn't find any way to eat the girl's meat fresh, so I thought I have to kill.
So Sagawa apparently had a fantasy to eat beautiful women. He apparently chose Renee because she was beautiful and he wanted to absorb her energy. On June 11th, 1981, he invited Renee over and shot her at the back of the neck. He then ate her over the next 2 days. Starting off this countdown, we have Elizabeth WETTLAUFER.
I've done this and I'm ready to face it, but I would love to go.
Elizabeth WETTLAUFER was a Canadian registered nurse for 9 years in southwestern Ontario. In 2016, she quit her nursing job, checked herself into a psychiatric hospital, and confessed to her crimes. Apparently, between 2007 to 2016, she used her powers as a nurse to take the lives of 8 of her patients, and injured 6 others. She would do so by giving them lethal doses of insulin. She also admitted to stealing opioids to fuel her personal addiction. After she confessed to the killings, an interview took place with the police, and that's when she confessed her crimes once again, this time in a detailed statement. Apparently, she had voices in her head telling her to kill those patients.
Part of me had started to believe that it was the devil, and part of me thought it might be God as a purpose through my life.
At first, she believed that this was God talking to her, so she felt okay killing for him. Then later on, she thought maybe it was the devil. On top of that, she claimed that it was a gut instinct telling her that these people needed to be killed. And once she did the deed, she would hear laughter in her chest.
Whatever it wasn't a voice in my head, it was a voice in here. And when I would do it, afterwards I would hear like a laughter in my head.
She was sentenced to 8 concurrent life sentences with no chance of parole for 25 years. In our 9th spot, we have Robert Durst. Robert Durst is an American convicted murderer and possible serial killer. It all started in 1982 with the disappearance of his wife, Kathy Durst. Obviously, he was the main suspect. Then in 2000, he murdered one of his friends, Susan Berman, and in 2001, he killed his neighbor. And just this year, he was finally convicted for killing his wife. During his interviews and interrogations, he maintained his innocence, claiming that he never did it. But after one of his final interviews, he made a grave mistake. He went to the bathroom and didn't realize that his mic was still on. While in the bathroom, he was talking to himself and basically confessed to the killings.
There it is. You're caught. Disaster. What the hell did I do? Kill them all. Of course.
The interviewers were completely shocked by what they heard, and Robert was immediately arrested. In our 8th spot, we have Daniel Wozenak. Daniel Wozenak is a former community theater actor who in May of 2010 took the lives of 2 people. During that time, he was struggling financially. He was in debt and unemployed. Then when he heard that his friend Sam Herr had $62,000 from combat pay, he decided to kill Sam in order to steal his money. Then he ended up killing a woman named Julie Kabushi, a 23-year-old college student who was tutoring Sam. His plan was to make it seem like Sam killed Julie and then went on the run. But in the end, he was caught. This video is from the police interrogation of Daniel. Here's him putting the blame on Sam.
Opened the door, it was Sam. I'm like, hey man, what's going on? Everything good? And he's like, not good, we're in trouble. We need to get the out of here. And so he drove, he's like, there's a dead body in my apartment. He said he'd been doing some heavy drugs. He's like, I shot somebody. I was not happy about it. It was a fit of rage, and honestly, she had it coming. I said she.
But of course, the police weren't buying his story. It was all too convenient.
Where's the gun, Sam? What did you do with the gun?
I'm not Sam, my name's Dan.
I know, but that's what you were, wasn't that what you were asking him?
No, I had nothing to do with this because my life was in danger with my wife. I'm sorry.
How was your life in danger?
He threatened it.
The two interrogators could see through Daniel's act. In fact, they said it was as if he was putting on a theater show for them. In the end, Daniel did confess, but figured he might try and act insane in order to get off with lesser charges.
Money and insanity.
Money and insanity. Okay.
In our 7th spot, we have patient number 18. Now, this has got to be one of the creepiest and mysterious clips on the internet. It's an interview featuring a man named Patient 18. This interview is filmed at a psychiatric hospital, and this man is there because he has schizophrenia. This tape is actually what schools use to teach their students about schizophrenia and the mind. But it's mysterious because we don't know much about this dude. Now, I just want to say, having schizophrenia or mental health issues does not make this guy an evil person. He's on today's list because apparently at the hospital he admitted to taking someone's life. Plus, he has a history of criminal behavior. Upon doing more research, this might be a man named Stephen E. Anyways, take a look at this interview.
And what happened that ended up with your being here in the hospital?
The psychiatrist decided that this was the situation for me.
Did he tell you why?
No, the psychiatrist did not.
Has anybody told you why?
No.
I got chills. I don't know about you. It's quite interesting how he carefully plans out his answers. Plus, no matter what they're talking about, he still shows no emotion.
And in what way are you different?
I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do. And this influences my thinking and consequently my actions.
He may seem calm on the outside, but what you can't imagine is everything that's going on in his head. You can tell he's trying hard to stay in control.
As soon as I express the belief that I do not belong in this hospital, which is a mental hospital, then those who dislike me want to find a worse place for me.
In our 6th spot, we have Alonzo Perez. In 2016, Alonzo Perez was charged for a series of crimes, including robbery with use of a deadly weapon, attempted murder with use of a deadly weapon, grand larceny, and battery. He was also arrested in connection with the death of Mohammed Robinson. This is footage of Alonzo inside of the interrogation cell waiting to be questioned. But not much of that actually happens, as he manages to escape. First, we see him looking around at the cameras, and then he decides to forcibly remove his handcuffs. Now, he does manage to get them off, but he's not ready to leave yet. He hasn't thought of a plan. So he pretends that his handcuffs are still on and he thinks of an escape plan. When he thinks of his plan, he gets up, climbs up, and escapes by crawling through the ceiling. He then drove away in a rental truck that someone left with the engine running. But don't worry, it was short-lived freedom because within days he was caught again, and in more trouble. In the end though, he did plead guilty to 3 murders. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Andre Chikatilo. Andre Chikatilo, otherwise known as the Butcher of Rostov or the Rostov Ripper, was responsible for the deaths of 56 individuals. He would lure people that he met at bus stops or train stations away to remote locations, and then he would murder them. Sometimes he would even eat certain parts of his victims. In this interview, what shocks a lot of people is the fact that everyone expects him to act like a monster, but in fact, he acts quite the opposite. he seems innocent, which is either an act or, you know, his true personality. So he keeps up the innocent act saying how he feels sorry, blah blah blah. But the act drops when he is asked one question. Now the interview is in Russian, but I have the translation. So the interviewer asks him if he has ever thought about meeting his victims in heaven or hell. He answers with, and I quote, "No, I have never thought about that, never. I feel like it doesn't bother me. I have never thought about it. I have already passed all rounds of hell in my life. I am already ready to pass away to the other world again." That right there is creepy, not gonna lie. In our fourth spot, we have David Berkowitz, but you probably better know him as the son of Sam. He was a serial killer who took the lives of 6 individuals and wounded 7 others in New York City for more than a year. He would typically target good-looking young women with long brown hair. As a result, a number of women were cutting their hair short or dyeing it blonde. He was eventually known as the son of Sam because he would leave letters near his victims' bodies, signing it off with that name. In the end, he was caught and claimed that his neighbor's dog was possessed by a demon, and that this demon dog was the one telling him to kill these people. Wild, I know. Well, years later, he did this interview. He admits to being into Satanism and how it influenced him.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about Satan, what are you actually referring to?
Well, you know, many people may not really understand that, but there was a time I was so confused and so troubled that I was seeking meaning and purpose. I was seeking something, I don't know, as my life began to spin out of control. I mean, I got involved in like Satanism, and I was reading the Satanic Bible. And
he continues on talking about himself, but a lot of people believe he was just putting on an act the whole time, that he was trying to convince people that he's normal so that he would be released early. This is pretty common among serial killers. They love to manipulate people.
How does it feel to be here for 30 years knowing that this is going to be it?
You know, it's like, you know, the expression, take one day at a time, and it's never easy, you know, being incarcerated. I have no one to blame but myself.
In our third spot, we have Michael Beaver. In July of 2015, 16-year-old Michael Beaver and his 18-year-old brother Robert took the lives of their parents and 3 siblings. They first attacked their sister. When she screamed, their mother ran out of the bedroom and they stabbed her over 50 times. Eventually, they worked their way around the house, killing their family members. It's a very scary and graphic case. In this interview, Michael completely confesses to everything to an officer.
So he was buying weapons because you guys had talked about murdering.
Yeah, and he started planning again.
Okay. And that you didn't want to do it?
I don't want to do it. I didn't, just because I didn't kill anyone.
Okay.
I stabbed someone.
Who did you stab?
My younger brother, Christopher.
Christopher? How old's Christopher?
9, I think.
What did you stab him with?
My knife.
What's your knife look like?
There's literally no emotion in his voice, and for being so young, he doesn't seem affected by this at all. But here's the thing, this guy was obsessed with other killers, and the police officer noticed this and kept prying.
Because you mentioned a couple names of, are those like serial killers or something?
What, like Columbine?
Yeah.
Columbine and James Egan Holmes. James Egan Holmes is a guy that shot at the theater.
In Colorado?
Yeah, he killed 12 and
wow. How many were killed in Columbine?
Columbine, I don't know, like 15,
okay.
I think.
He knew the killer's first and last names and their kill count. No one just knows that information off the top of their head, so that's creepy. In our second spot, we have the BTK killer. Between the years of 1974 to 1991, American serial killer Dennis Rader took the lives of 10 individuals. In 2005, he was convicted for his crimes and was sentenced to 175 years in solitary confinement without the possibility of parole. This video is Dennis's confession to killing Maureen Hedge.
So I very carefully snuck into the house, kind of like a cat burglar, and after checking the house, she wasn't there. So about that time, the doors rattled, so I went back to one of the bedrooms and hid back there in one of the bedrooms.
He then proceeded to talk about how he stayed in her house for hours until the next morning when he woke up and strangled her.
No, I manually strangled her when she started to scream.
So you used your hands?
Yes, sir.
And you strangled her? Did she die?
Yes. It's chilling seeing him talk so casually about all of this.